Somewhere in these woods, in this primal, sensuous, secret place, lies an experience too terrifying for words. The Howling.
Hello everyone, this is Justina Bonilla here with Latin Horror, and today we have a wonderful guest with us. Celebrating the 40th anniversary of The Howling with us is Miss Dee Wallace, a true American scream queen. So thank you for joining us, Miss Wallace.
Yes, I am. I'm proud of it. Lovely to be here.
Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us. This is a movie we are big fans of over here, so to be speaking with you is so much fun.
Well, I'm a pretty big fan of the film also. I think it was really the quintessential werewolf film in the last 40-some years. And it really holds up, and I'm really glad there's a lot of fans over there for the film.
And so before The Howling, you've actually done other horror films according to IMDb, such as The Hills Have Eyes and The Stepford Wives. So I was wondering, what was your experience with those horror films?
Well, The Hills Have Eyes was a very, very low budget. All the actors were just really happy to have a job, you know. We all stayed in one trailer. We shot in the desert. It was hard. It was a really hard and difficult shoot.
Right.
But, you know, who knew all those years ago, like The Howling, we would be making a cult classic that would live this long with the fans. It's crazy to me.
And to me, one of the scariest horror movies from the 70s would be The Stepford Wives. Even though it's very simple, there's just something so creepy about it. I guess as a woman watching that going, oh my God, we're being made into robots.
Well, and unfortunately, a lot of women still are. But that's a whole other political thing that we won't get into. The Stepford Wives, you know, I really didn't have, I think I worked a day on it. It was my first film foray when I was in New York. I was actually sitting in a lobby waiting to be interviewed for a part-time job, and Brian, the director, kept walking back and forth and looking at me and said, are you an actress? I said, I am. He said, you want to be in a movie? I said, I do. And so it was quite an interesting experience watching those three lovely actresses who were like night and day from each other, right? Working together on this script. It was eye-opening to me.
The Howling. Somewhere in this city, in this human jungle, it begins.
What appealed to you about the Howling script when you first read it?
First of all, I thought it was a tour de force role for a woman. It gave me a lot of big emotional opportunities, which I love. I love delving into all the emotion and the arcs that I got to play in that. And I just instantly fell in love with Dan Blatt, our producer, and Joe Dante. And then, you know, Dan called me and said, you know, we've got a great cast for you, Dee, but we can't find anybody to play your husband. I said, well, what exactly are you looking for? And he said, you know, somebody really virile and manly, but with a real vulnerable side. And I went, oh my God, I'm engaged to him, and he's an actor. So, but I of course didn't say that because I knew instantly they would never see him if they knew we were together. So I said, you know, I worked with this guy, Christopher Smith or Stone or some S word. I think maybe you should look in. And so they went out and found him. Wow. And brought him in, and he booked the part. And then they found out we were together. So
Well, it makes your relationship on screen more believable, especially the scenes of tension and drama.
Yeah.
It really does add to it.
We just worked together so well that we kind of knew each other's impulses before we actually moved into them.
It's good to have a partner that understands you in more ways than one.
You bet.
So for filming The Howling, what would you say was your most memorable or favorite part about filming?
The big transformation scene where I'm standing there forever looking at the guy turning into the werewolf. Well, I didn't have a werewolf there, obviously. That was all put in weeks later after I finished.
Oh, it was?
So I was standing on the stage and Joe would say, okay, now he's getting taller. Whoops, there go his ears coming out. Now his nose, and I could hear the crew starting to snicker. So I lost it. I mean, it was all pretty funny trying to do it that way. And I just said, Joe, just tell me the sequence and I'll imagine it myself, because it took me right out of it to hear his voice. So we all had a really good laugh after that scene. And it was not the most fun I've ever had the night that Christopher did his nude scene with the she-wolf. Mm-hmm. And Joe came up to me and said, oh my gosh, Dee, are you going to be on the set when we shoot this scene? Because all the crew, you have to understand, we had become a big family. Right. And the crew was very protective of me by that point, because everything I did came from vulnerability. And I said, no, I'm going to town and I'm getting drunk. And I did. And Christopher came in around 4 a.m. and I was waiting up and he went, oh my God, go to sleep. It was nothing. We froze our butts off, and all we wanted to do was get out of there. So
that explains that animation scene at the end. Like, forget it. It's too cold. Just
Yeah, the very end of The Howling, they called me when I was doing Cujo. And Joe said, we just screened it and all the letters that come back say they want to see your character turn into a werewolf. Well, for some reason in my contract, I guess it was important back then, I had it that my character would never be seen as a werewolf. So I went, I don't care, Joe, just could you make her a little more vulnerable, because she's fought so hard? So they came up with this Bambi werewolf. It's all an animatronic. I'm not behind the makeup at all. And
it looked real.
Yeah, well, it is real. It's just not me. And the first time I saw it was the first time I saw the movie. Oh my God. You really did take my note, didn't you? And make her vulnerable with a little tear coming down her face. And I call her my Bambi werewolf.
Your little were Pekingese.
Yes, my little Pekingese, yep.
I actually have to say, she was a very adorable werewolf. Unlike everybody else, looked really evil. She was really cute.
Yeah.
And honestly, that was probably one of the saddest horror endings for me. You're like, oh no.
Oh, well, good. That's good, because you identified with the struggle. So thank you. That's a compliment to me.
And so speaking about your experiences on set, you were able to work with two, I would say, legendary actors with Slim Pickens and John Carradine. What was that experience like for you, considering they had such esteemed careers?
Just absolutely amazing. We would sit around the campfires and listen to their stories. They were really true Hollywood gentlemen. We've lost a little bit of that these days, but they were always there. And Mr. Carradine was not terribly well, but he never complained. He was always there for his co-stars, and would just sit for hours, he and Slim, telling us stories about the good old days. They were quite amazing to work with.
Also, as you mentioned, you got to work with Joe Dante. What was it like being directed by him as an actor?
Just freedom. It was fun. Joe is so much fun, but and so down to earth, but he knows exactly what he wants, and yet he gives you all the freedom to bring in your ideas too. So that creates a lot of magic that can happen when you have that freedom. When you have a clear direction and then you know that you have the freedom to play, well, that's an actor's dream for me.
Right. Speaking of the film more in depth, when you went to the premiere, how did you feel seeing yourself on the big screen? Because I believe you have said in the past that this was your first leading lady role.
Well, I had seen me on screen in The Hills Have Eyes. And I believe I had done 10 by then also. This picture, I really carried this picture. I feel like Karen's character, that if Karen didn't work and if you didn't bond with her and go on the journey with her, the movie didn't really work. My challenge in all of these horror films that I've done is to keep it as honest and real in the moment as I can, because the tendency is to make it bigger and crazier, and and so I just kept saying to myself, as I did in Cujo too, okay, what would I really do in this moment, and allow me to be Karen in that moment, right?
Even though this movie's 40 years old, she's still very relatable. The struggle, especially with trauma, the fact that you see her vulnerability with that, but then also, like, I guess you could say, like the slasher films at the time, she was, the last girl was able to, kick butt. So I find her very relatable in that regard, and she's still a very strong character, vulnerable and strong.
Yeah, and the picture wouldn't have worked without that balance of vulnerability and strength.
Right.
We had to have both, because you had to believe that she actually would hold her own against that dark force, and I think we pulled it off.
And now, all anyone can do is watch and wait.
Tonight I'm going to show you something. Make you believe.
I saw that in both your IMDb and Joe Dante's that both of you, soon after this film, worked on Spielberg films. With you, it was with E.T., and with him, it was Gremlins. So how did that feel moving on to Spielberg films?
Well, Mr. Spielberg is an amazing director, as we all know. I was blessed, and I was very grateful. They're all special to me, all of them, for different reasons. I mean, The Howling got me a lot of attention. E.T. put me on a really major map as far as the industry was concerned. So they all serve different things in your life, and they all serve different achievements, if you will.
Well, I believe next year is the 40th anniversary of E.T.
Yes, it's coming up again. It's our Wizard of Oz. It's never, ever, ever going to go away.
Exactly. And speaking of other classics, outside of The Howling, are there any other werewolf movies that you enjoy?
Oh, I love all the classics. I'm very wussy. I do horror films, but I don't watch a lot of horror films because I'm the quintessential horror audience.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like this half the time. So I like the older movies because they're not real, and there's that distance now between them. Mm-hmm. Some of the newer ones kind of freak me out. We went to the movies a couple of years ago, and I think I sat there like this most of the time. So I try and watch them at home now, right? So I I don't know, I feel safer at home. Although I did a short this year called Stay Home. I produced it just for our horror fans. And it's all about, it's a takeoff on COVID, of course, that the people who stayed home weren't safe at all.
Real horror.
Yeah, today's horror.
Exactly. Looking outside of your acting career, you've also have been a part of public speaking and you've written books. So I was wondering what encouraged you to become an author?
I was compelled to take my healing work out into the world. And so that's what I wrote my books about. I'm a clairaudient channel and I teach people how to create their lives. I have clients all over the world.
Wow.
And it's an interesting dichotomy of me that I spend half my life doing horror films and the other half of my life teaching people how to recover and heal from the horror in their own lives.
Right.
And the two worlds come together better than you ever might imagine.
Well, seeing how horror deals with trauma, I can see the similarities.
Well, I can tell you the biggest monsters we're running away from are our own fears.
So are you going to be writing another book or doing any other acting?
I have finished my 6th book. We're shopping it around right now. It's all on the creation process. Probably the quintessential book that I've ever written. People just don't understand. They think they do, but they really don't understand the creation process and how simple it is to manifest in your life. So I've done that. I have, I think, 4 now horror films coming out that I did either right before the pandemic hit or I just finished an incredible horror film called The Nix. Fanboy 13 is coming out. Await the Dawn is coming out. So, you know, when things open up, I'm going to be everywhere, I think.
Well, we're excited to see what you are doing and what you will be doing. And final question, circling back to The Howling, seeing how The Howling has one of the, I would say, most heartbreaking and creepiest endings. I know it's so mundane, the hamburger flipping. So I have to ask you, how do you like your burgers? Do you like rare, well done, or something in between?
Medium well, baby, medium well.
Medium well.
Yeah. I'm not into that fleshy stuff. As many horror films as I do, I'm not into that. Oh, that's funny. Never been asked that before. Good for you.
Really? Well, I'm glad it's the first time. I would think in 40 years somebody would have asked you the hamburger question.
You would have thought that, huh? Yeah, but no, I don't remember ever getting that question about how I like my burgers.
Well, we'll make sure to ask Joe Dante that. When we get the chance to interview him, we'll ask him, how do you like your burgers?
He'll like that, by the way.
Oh my goodness.
Joe has just an amazing sense of humor. Just an amazing sense of humor. And all of the old clips that you saw in The Howling, those were Joe's ideas, and he actually paid for them himself.
Oh, wow. Well, it gives the film an even more authentic feel because it doesn't feel like everyone's like, oh, what's a werewolf? Everybody already knows, but they just don't want to believe it.
Exactly. And that was his whole intention.
Well, thank you, Dee, for joining us and for everyone watching at home. And we are not only excited for this 40th anniversary, but we look forward to the other anniversaries to come for this film. Thank you so much, and the best of luck with your future projects.
Thank you, and to you.
The Howling.